معالي المدير العام، معالي المدير العام.
نعم نعم.
هل بالامكان ان تقولوا للمشاركين ينتظرون بعض الدقائق، لان الان كلموني من تشاد فخامه الرئيس وفي يعني سيصل بعد دقائق.
طيب قلت لهم هذا الشيء.
نعم. Ini buka lampu sendiri, lampu saya ambil. Ini buka sebanyak lampu, nanti ada yang mana stop, gelap. Dan isu
نعتذر كثيرا، ولكن لا زلنا بانتظار فخامة الرئيس. ننتظر أيضا 5 دقائق أخرى لعل وعسى، وإلا سنبدأ. شكرا. نبدأ. يبدو أن فخامة الرئيس وصل ولله الحمد. فخامة الرئيس نرحب بك. إذا نبدأ. طيب إذا نبدأ. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
السلام ورحمة الله
وبركاته. أن أرحب ترحيبا كريما بفخامة الرئيس إدريس دبي أتنو رئيس جمهورية تشاد الذي يشرفنا في افتتاح هذا المنتدى. كما أشكر لكم جميعا حضوركم المتميز هذا، وأخص بالشكر رابطة العالم الإسلامي والمجلس العالمي للمجتمعات المسلمة اللذين ساهما في رعاية هذا المنتدى. نبدأ مؤتمرنا هذا بآيات من الذكر الحكيم تتلوها على مسامعنا السيدة والموظفة بالإيسيسكو حسناء خولاني.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء. واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام.
ايوه لحظه.
اتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام، إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. صدق الله العظيم.
صدق الله العظيم. الآن مع ضيفنا فخامة الرئيس السيد إدريس دبي أتنو رئيس جمهورية تشاد والذي يشرفنا هذا المنتدى. الكلمة لكم فخامة الرئيس.
Merci, Monsieur le Directeur Général de l'UNESCO. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Monsieur le Directeur Général.
The Honorable DG of ISESCO, eminent religious leaders, distinguished guests, all protocols considered. I would like at the outset to congratulate you for holding such an important event that is quite important, that is devoted to the problem of role of religious leadership in face of crises. So, they're quite important to have exchange such as this one, and in order to cope with, there is no need to show the importance of such a conference to cope with crises. I would like to congratulate strongly the DG of ISESCO, in particular, Dr. Salim Mohammed Al-Malik, for the honorable and important opportunity and initiative that is offered to us of exchanging on this very important topic that is a major concern of all leaderships. Personally, I am honored to receive the invitation extended to me in order to take part in this important event and to give and take and receive and share. Ladies and gentlemen, I need not say that the nations in the world are facing quite important challenges, unequal challenges, unprecedented challenges. We witness every day on a daily basis to conflicts and to crises that are more tragic than other crises. The persistence of these challenges and the magnitude of these challenges, the virulence of hatred sometimes really is quite challenging to the future of our respective countries. And so these are crises that have become a reality on the ground, and we need to really pull all our resources and all our effort in order to establish peace and order between nations in the world, and so that they can prevail. The first victims are innocent victims accruing from these challenges and crises, and so this leads to more division, and that breaks the hopes for a better future. And this is the reason, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, the conflicts that are threatening peace in our region and in the world over, and we need to focus our attention and in order to deal with these crises and challenges. It's along these lines, ladies and gentlemen, that the importance of this meeting really is highlighted in order to deal with turning religious leaderships and making of them an integral part of the fight against these crises and challenges. Also because they have an ethic and a moral ethic. I'd like to congratulate myself and congratulate you of the choice of this topic, more particularly dealing with the contribution of religious leaderships in the quest for answers to and solutions to crises and problems. Indeed, only a global approach, and a holistic approach to seek peace and establish this peace that will require the mobilization of all the resources and human resources that will make it possible to capitalize and also find an appropriate solution. We need to find a participative and inclusive solution, and the role of religious leaderships is quite important in many regards, because they have a vocation to deal, and they have the moral authority to deal with these men and women of religious leadership, really, who have devoted their lives to spiritual deeds. Really, they need to be availed of all their resources in order to work and be fruitful on the topics that they are assigned, in order to disseminate a spirit of love and peace that are essential and criterial for all religions and divine religions. All these shrines are sanctuaries. They enjoy harmony. And so by organizing this meeting on religious leadership, ISESCO has seen right to it, and the involvement of religious leadership is quite important. Religious actors are quite important to be involved in the resolution of crises and challenges. Therefore, religious leaders are quite important, and their role is quite important in order to initiate a sustainable change of the mentalities and mindsets. Eminent religious leaders, ladies and gentlemen, by tackling the topic of religious leaderships in face of crises, in seeking peace and order, I cannot prevent myself from talking to you about the National Day for holding a prayer for peaceful peace that is organized in Chad every year on a yearly basis in November. This day prayer and subsequent to this prayer day that is organized every year in Chad, the religious platform is always active to seek solutions to the problems that are facing peace in a very fraternal way between all the sons and daughters of Chad. This topic is quite important, and this is going to be a fertile lab in seeking solutions for the prevalence of peace and for prevalence of cohesions. These values, ladies and gentlemen, that are anchored in our and rooted in our minds and in our hearts really are our force and constitute therefore the powerful lever of our collective march towards progress and modernity. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic of religious leadership in face of crisis and also seeking peace and order is quite important, and this is quite important to link these crises to the current crisis that has shaken the world, COVID-19. Well, you undoubtedly we are dealing with COVID-19, as you do. We know all, ladies and gentlemen, this evil has really spread quite a lot of havoc in the world by killing thousands and thousands of people, and also by putting our healthcare systems in a difficult situation and by disaggregating the economic fabrics of quite many countries in the world. The context, ladies and gentlemen, linked to the current health crisis, COVID-19, really requires from us courageous actions in order to enhance the protection of our grassroots populations and the world populations. And in this fight that we are conducting, the contribution of religious leadership is quite important, particularly because they have an assignment and a mission to fulfill. The religions of the world, our religious leadership, our best teachers in order to really teach us the best practices, such as the putting in place barriers in order to really stop the dissemination of the pandemic. And so I'd like to laud the work of everyone here. I would like to highlight the importance of these actors in the field by trying to enhance the awareness of people from a health perspective, and we hope that their work is up to the level of our expectations. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to laud and greet our partners and who are supporting ISESCO in its mission, in exclusive mission for humanity and for civilization. I wish this initiative of ISESCO to be maintained throughout the years and more particularly to prevail. We would like to thank you immensely for your attention, ladies and gentlemen. Back to you, Mr. DG. Well, thanks very much indeed, Honorable President, for this lofty words. You highlighted the importance of sharing relevant points, and you have also highlighted the importance of religious leadership in providing solutions to the problems and crises that are shaking the world. In your words, in your address, you said that those who are the first victims are the civilian populations, and that the topic of religious leadership is quite important, and that the holistic approach is the only one conducive to finding really peace and order. And all divine religions need to be involved, and you highlighted the importance of divine religions, their contributions. Really, COVID-19 has shaken the world, and that confronting this pandemic requires efforts from all of us, because religious leaders have a moral values, and you laud the work of ISESCO. More particularly, would like to thank you, Honorable President, for your address and also for your participation. I'd like to move on now to for a little change in the program, and I would like to really move to the address of in the name of Allah, peace and blessing be on our Prophet, honorable attendees, excellencies, peace and blessing be on you. I would like to say and extend a warm welcome to you for your presence, and we are seeking through this conference to collaborate and also to really find appropriate mechanism by which we can really fight against COVID-19. So the surprise that has shaken the world due to the dissemination of this COVID has harvested more than 700,000 lives, and more particularly, we need to do all we can, leave no stone unturned in order to find a solution to this under these circumstances marked by anxiety. And so then quite many voices have been heard in order to involve religious leaderships, because they have a wealth of experience and they can establish bridges for communication to continue. And so this is reflected in quite many campaigns, awareness enhancement campaigns, and also the campaigns that have been made by media outlets. Our religion, Islam, has always been a source of peace. The Prophet really said in one of his hadith, no one can love the other until he loves what he loves for himself to the other. And so these are quite an important in this time of crisis, the religious leadership is quite important more than ever in order to really to build solidarity, in order to help us really find peace and stability in the world, knowing that the people of the book represent more than 550 million people. Ladies and gentlemen, the ISESCO has been quite active since the emergence of COVID-19, has done all it can in order to cope with pedagogical problems, with spiritual problems. One of the initiatives launched by ISESCO, we really consisted in making available a library in the holy month of Ramadan. And there is also the initiative for human alliance, and also the initiative of the communities that we are seeking to have, and the call to close the places of worship in order to avoid the spread of COVID-19, more particularly in order to and in strengthening these efforts really comes the role played by religious leaderships in order to find appropriate solutions to the crisis, and also fight against racism and discrimination, because religion is at the end we resort to religion in order to cope with the problems. ISIS-Co has prepared quite a lot of strategic strategies, of which a study on the strategic development of the world that highlights the importance of the exploratory. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, this pandemic that has been quite difficult to find requires from all of us a collective effort, more particularly to provide support to the organization, grassroots organizations of ISIS-Co, and finally, really achieving our goals, really on the draft declaration. God says, act. Allah will see your action, and peace and blessing be on you. Thank you. And now, I give the floor to the Secretary General of the Muslim League, Dr. Muhammad Abdul Karim Al Isa. The floor is yours.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. معالي رئيس منظمة الإسيسكو الدكتور سالم بن محمد المالك، أصحاب الفضيلة والمعالي والسعادة، سيداتي وسادتي الحضور الكريم، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أما بعد، فيسعدنا في رابطة العالم الإسلامي وهيئة علماء المسلمين أن نكون معكم في هذا المؤتمر بالصلة بدور القيادات الدينية في مواجهة الأزمات، والذي اطلعت بفكرته الرائدة في سياقات هذه الجائحة العالمية، اطلعت به منظمة الإسيسكو بمشاركة رابطة العالم الإسلامي وهيئة علماء
with the Islamic League has played a role, an important role, and the role of spiritual and religious leaders is very important. And this is mentioned either in text or represented in research and research work, and this is clear also in an Islamic discourse that's framing the message in order to reach the truth, and this based on the precepts of Islam. Ladies and gentlemen, the Islamic Ummah, humanity in general, is now in total need of enlightened sagacity and in need of religious leadership, because the Islamic Ummah now is waiting for the solution suggested by these leaderships, and this to keep the peace in our world. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected everybody, and the solutions are the responsibility of everybody as well. And Islamic contribution is very important, and Muslim scientists and Muslim leaders are necessary to face this crisis. And this is a duty, this is a religious and moral duty. Religious leaderships participate in events and even do even better and more, because they are beyond specifications and specific expertise. This is why religious leaderships need to act very quickly, and they need dialogue with other religious leaderships when necessary, and particularly concerning what we have in common. Finally, I would like to thank my friend and brother Salim ibn Mohammed Al Malik for this initiative in the perspective of the huge missions of ISISCO and the leadership of His Excellency, and I wish you full success.
شكرا
Thank you. Thank you.
على هذه الكلمة
Thank you for these nice words. And you have confirmed the role of religious leaderships and the importance of the message, the Islamic message, and that Ummah is in total need of the solutions suggested by these religious leaderships. Thank you, to you, Your Excellency, Mr. Secretary General. Now we give the floor the floor to Mohammed Mukhtar Jum'a from Egypt. You have the
الحمد لله
floor.
رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خاتم أنبيائه ورسله سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبع هداه إلى يوم الدين. فخامة السيد الرئيس إدريس دبي رئيس جمهورية تشاد، معالي الدكتور سالم بن محمد المالك المدير العام لمنظمة العالم الإسلامي للتربية والعلوم والثقافة السيسكو، معالي الأخ الدكتور محمد بن عبد الكريم العيسى أمين عام رابطة العالم الإسلامي، سعادة الأستاذ الدكتور محمد المحاصاوي رئيس جامعة الأزهر، نائبا عن فضيلة الإمام الأكبر الأستاذ الدكتور أحمد الطيب شيخ الأزهر، معالي سعادة الدكتور علي بن راشد النعيمي رئيس المجلس العالمي للمجتمعات المسلمة، أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، السادة العلماء والمفتون والمفكرون، الزملاء الكرام. بداية يسعدني
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank ISISCO and the Islamic League and the Council of Muslim Communities. Thank you to you all for your cooperation to organize this forum. Ummahs and nations which are not built on ethics and morals will fall, no doubt, bear their fall. And history is the best witness for this. These events are known, and ummahs are their morals. When their morals go, they must go, and they will fall. All throughout history, all nations, all civilizations that have deviated from morals and human ethics have ended and disappeared. This is a rule of God. Only the good stay. So, ethical principles are the one that will stay. And it has nothing to do with the interests of some powers, of some countries. When a crime is perpetrated somewhere, we just close our eyes and do nothing. While when an event takes place elsewhere, it is considered as a crime, or we consider an event as a transgression, while we consider it elsewhere as a freedom. This is not acceptable. No, Miss Piketty. And there is No despicity in a religion
وبالتالي
and
قائم
in
على
creeds.
الأخلاق والقيم الإنسانية ما لم يشوهها
Nations are based
تحريف
on
البشر
ethics, on
أو
morals,
ضعف
and
الأعداء
religious
أو
principles
قادة
are
خاطئة ما
also based
عمدا
on these
وقصدا
ethics and
وبأي
in
عنق
these
بخصوصها
moral
أو
principles.
جهلا وجمودا وتحجرا عند ظواهر
We
بعض
don't
النصوص
want
وتفسيرها
to be
بالاستهزاء
ignorant or
ببعض
to
الجماعات
show our ignorance
المتطرفة
or to show
التي
that we
تدعو
don't
للدينية
know
والقيم
when
وإلا
some events take
فهنا
place and
أي شريعة من الشرائع
perpetrated by
وتحرك
persons
النفس التي
who
حرم الله
say
إلا بالحق
that
أباح
they are
قتل
killing
النفس
people out of
فهؤلاء أي
religion
شريعة
or
من
based
الشرائع
on no
أباحت قتل
religion
النفس التي حرم
has
الله إلا بالحق
ordered
أو أباح عقوق
killing.
الوالدين أو أكل السحت أو أكل مال
No
اليتيم أو
religion
أخذ
has
حق
ordered
المال أو
and
الأمين
the fact
فهؤلاء أي
to
شريعة
eat and
أباحت
to spend
الكذب
the
أو
money
الخدع
of the
أو
poor
الخيانة
and the
أو
money
عنف
of
العاثر
the
أو
orphan.
مقابلة الحسنة
And no
بالسيئة
religion
بل على
has
عكس
ordered
ذلك
or has
فإن
permitted
جميع الشرائع السماوية
treason.
قد
All
اتفقت وأجمعت
religious
على القيم
religions
الإنسانية
have
السامية
agreed
من العدل
on a
والتساوي
lot
والوفاء بالعهد وأداء
human
الأمانة وصدق الحديث وبر
principles,
الوالدين وحرمة
truth,
مال اليتيم
and they will
ومراعاة
go
حق
to one's
الجوار
parents
على مستوى
and the
الأقارب
rights of
والقبائل
neighbors and
والمجتمعات والدول
faith
وحق
and
الجوار في الإسلام ما يجب
equality
أن
and
نفهمه
human
أو أن نقوم
rights.
به عند جوار الأشخاص. جوار
And
الدول لا
when we
يقل
speak in Islam
أهمية عن
about
جوار
neighbors,
الأشخاص
it
فكما
is
نحفظ
not
حق الجار
only
على مستوى
about
الأفراد
people
يجب
or
أن نحفظ
individuals.
حق
No, neighbors
الجار
mean
على مستوى
also
الدول أيضا.
countries
كل
and
الشرائع
other
تجمع على الكلمة
nations.
الطيبة
All
وخلق الله
religions
الحسنى
have
وذلك لأن
called
أصل
to
التشريع
use
السماوي واحد
nice
فإن
words.
وجدت من يخرج على هذه القيم الإنسانية
And if you
فإنه
find
يخرج على
someone
مقتضى
who
الأديان
has
فحسب وإنما
deviated
يخرج
from these
على مقتضى
principles, it doesn't mean
الإنسانية
that these
ويمارس
persons
آداب
have
المسلم
disrespect, who
ومن
has disrespect
الفطرة
for religions, but
الإنسانية
he
السليمة
or she has
التي
disrespect
فرضها الله الناس
also for
عليها
human
ذلك أن
principles,
الأخلاق
universal
راسخة في
principles.
الأديان وراسخة
Ethics
في الدول
are
الحضارات
consecrated
العريقة
in
وراسخة في القيم
religions, in
الإنسانية الراقية
civilizations, and
ونأمل
in
أن تفهم
humanity.
قيادات الدينية وأن نسعى
And
جميعا
we hope that
بتحقيق
all of
هذه
us,
القيم بشرط
all religious
عدم
leaderships, will
المكافأة بالدين
consecrate
وعدم
these
المتاجرة بالقيم والاستغلال
values and
السياسي
ethics
لها
on one
بما لا
condition,
يتسق
not
لا
to
مع صلاح
instrument them,
الدين
not to
ولا
use
مع عظيم
them
القيم
in
ولكن
doing
للأسف
things that
الشديد
are
من
contrary to
يتطاول أو
religions.
يعتري تحت مسمى
Unfortunately,
نشر
there
القيم
are
ومن يقتل
people
ويخرب
who
للأسف
kill
الشديد
and
بسياسة
who
الأديان أو
propagate
تحت
a
راية الأديان
discourse of
والأديان
hatred in the
المتمثلة في
name
الظاهر
of
فقط
religions,
يجب
while
أن
religion
نفرق
is
ونوضح
innocent
بين
from
الدين
this
الذي هو
hate,
حق وبين
dissociated
أطماع بعض
with
الدول أو القوى التي
between
تدافع
a
عن الدين
religion which is
كما
right
علمنا
and
رجال
some
الدين
people who
أن نعمل
instrument
وبقوة
and
على
use
إحداث
religion. We
السلام
need
الإنساني
also to endeavor
السلام
together in
الإنساني
order
في
to
ربوع العالم كافة
to
للبشرية
put in
جمعاء
place
دون
humanity,
تمييز على الأساس
peace for
الديني
humanity
أو
without any
اللوني أو
discrimination
الجنسي
based
أو
on
العرق حيث
religion,
كرم
on
الحق سبحانه
an
وتعالى
ethnic
الإنسان
basis,
على
on the
إطلاق
color,
الإنسانية فقال
because
سبحانه ولقد
God
كرمنا
has
بني
made
آدم
of
لم
human
يقل
beings
كرمنا المسلمين وحدهم
uh,
أو المؤمنين وحدهم
dignified
أو الموحدين
beings,
وحدهم وإنما
not
قال
only
ولقد
Muslims or
كرمنا
Christians,
لم
no,
يكن
all
هذا
human beings and
خلق
all
الإنسان
sons
في
of
التعامل مع
Adam.
أخيه
And
الإنسان
this
إنه
should be
الإنسان
the
خلقه
basis
له
of our
بكل صورة
relations
إلى
and
جانب
of our
منظمة
behavior. And to conclude with, I would like to thank ISIS school
الشرائع على هذا
for
الجانب
this
الهام
initiative and for this nice assembly around this very important topic. And I wish the forum full success. And assalamu alaikum.
Well, thanks very much indeed,
Thank you, Your Excellency,
Excellency
Mr.
Minister of
Minister Mohammed
Religious
Mokhtar
Endowments
Juma,
from
Minister of
Egypt and
Endowments
the
from
President of the
Egypt.
Supreme Council
You
for
have
Islamic Affairs. As
mentioned
you
that
highlighted the importance that
that
nations are built
which
on
are not based and
morals and
constructed on there
throughout
will
history,
no doubt
all the
fall. And
nations that
history
deviated
has
from these
shown
norms
that all those
vanished and
nations that have
disappeared,
disregarded
and
these
that
ethics have
the
gone very
blessing
quickly,
one's
and
own
that
parents
nations
and also respecting one's own
cease
neighbor. All this
the
consolidates and
encourage principles
strengthen
of tolerance and
an
justice
appropriate
and
environment. I'd like to
fairness.
thank
Thank
you,
you, Your
Honorable Minister,
Excellency,
for your
Mr. Minister.
contributions. We
Now
would like to move
I
on
give the
now
floor
to His
to
Excellency
Sheikh al-Islam
Shukr
Basa
Zada,
the Mufti
Grand
of
Mufti of
Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan and Caucasus.
You
Would
have
like to
the
extend a
floor.
warm
Thank you very
welcome to
much.
you, Honorable Mufti.
Hörmətli Çad Respublikasının prezidenti cənab İdris Dedi SESCO baş direktoru Doktor Salim Əl-Malik cənabları, Rabitətul Alam İslamının baş katibi Muhammed Ali İsa cənabları, hörmətli dostum, qardaşım, Rəisid baş katibi Feysal Muhammed, hörmətli Müstəqillər Naziri və İslam İşləri Prezidenti, Ümumdünya Müsəlman Cümaları Şurasının sədri Ali Raşid Əl-Nureyni, hörmətli tədbir iştirakçıları, Assalamu aleykum və rəhmətullahi və bərəkatuhu. İlk növbədə Azərbaycan və ümumən Qafqaz müsəlmanları adından hamınızı salamlamaqdan məmnunluq duyduğumu bildirir və məni bu tədbirə dəvət etdiyinizə görə təşəkkürümü ifadə edirəm. Allah Teala xoşbəramlı amal və əməllərimizə ravac versin inşallah. Bəşəriyyətin 21-ci əsrdə üzləşdiyi ən təhlükəli tədbirlərdən olan koronavirus pandemiyası şəraitində belə bir forumun keçirilməsi şübhəsiz ki, son dərəcə doğru və zəruridir. Bu qlobal problemin törətdiyi fəsadlar həyatımızın bütün sahələri, o cümlədən dini fəaliyyətimiz və mənəvi həyatımızdan da yayın keçməmişdir. Pandemiyanın Dünya Səhiyyə Təşkilatı tərəfindən elan olunduğu ilk gündən başlayaraq Azərbaycan dövləti koronavirusa qarşı mübarizədə beynəlxalq həmrəyliyin gücləndirilməsi məqsədi ilə fərqli təşəbbüslər irəli sürdü və əməli addımlar atdı. Koronavirusla mübarizə çərçivəsində 30-dan artıq dövlətə humanitar yardımlar etdi. Cari ilin 4 may tarixində Qoşulmama Hərəkatının sədri qismində Prezident İlham Əliyev cənablarının təşəbbüsü ilə bu təşkilatın təmas qrupu formatında video konferans vasitəsilə COVID-19'a qarşı Dizgəyik adlı zirvə görüşü keçirildi. Bugün beynəlxalq gündəmdə Azərbaycanın dövlət başçısının təşəbbüsü ilə BMT-nin Baş Assambleyasının COVID-19'a həsr olunmuş xüsusi sesiyasının çağırılması yer alır. Eyni zamanda qeyd etməliyəm ki, Azərbaycan Respublikasının birinci vitse-prezidenti UNESCO-nun və İSESCO-nun Xoşməramlı səfiri Mehriban xanım Əliyevanın təşəbbüsü ilə pandemiya ilə əlaqədar ölkə daxilində, onun xaricində çoxsaylı humanitar yardım və xeyriyyəçilik aksiyaları keçirilməkdədir. Hörmətli forum iştirakçıları, ölkənin və regionun dini lideri olaraq həmişə olduğu kimi pandemiya dövründə də mən dillərarası bəşəri həmrəyliyə çağırışımı beynəlxalq müstəvidə dəfələrlə səsləndirmişəm. Belə ki, bu mövqeyimiz BMT-nin Sivilizasiyalar Alyansının təşəbbüsü ilə keçirilən onlayn məsləhətləşmədə Direktorlar Şurasının üzv olduğum Xəyşid Beynəlxalq Dinlərarası və Mədəniyyətlərarası Dialoq Mərkəzinin təşkil etdiyi pandemiya dövründə zəifləri qorunmaq mövzusunda video konferanslarda MDB ölkələri dini xadimlərinin pandemiya probleminə həsr olunmuş tədbirlərində, eləcə də İSESCO Baş Direktoru Səlim Əl-Malik cənabları ilə keçirdiyimiz onlayn görüşdə bildirmişəm. Düşünürəm ki, indiki çətin dövrdə bəşəri həmrəyliyə, o cümlədən humanizm nümayiş etdirərək ehtiyacı olanlara dəstək vermək, insanların imanını möhkəmləndirmək və onların gələcəyə ümidini artırmaq dini liderlərin umda vəzifələrindəndir. Hörmətli konferans iştirakçıları, təəssüflər olsun ki, pandemiyanın fəsadları şəraitində son günlər bədnam qonşumuz və Ermənistan tərəfindən Azərbaycanın bu ölkə ilə sərhəd bölgəsində yeni təxribatlar törüdülərək atəşkəs rejimi pozulmuş, arazilərimiz yenidən təcavüzə məruz qalmış, zabit və əskərlərimiz o cümlədən biz əhali arasında tələfatlarımız mövcuddur.
Unfortunately, against the background of the consequences of the pandemic, our territories in the border region of Azerbaijan with Armenia have come under fire in recent days, and there are casualties in this regard. Once again, call on the world community and religious leaders
Beynəlxalq hüquq normaları çərçivəsində ədalətli həllinə dəstək verməyə çağırıram. Sizi bir daha salamlayıram.
greet you once again, wish you success in the work today's forum, and congratulate all of you on the upcoming.
Bugünkü forumun işinə uğurlar diləyir. Qarşıdan gələn mübarək Eid-el Adha Qurban Bayramı münasibətilə hamınızı ürəkdən təbrik edirəm. Dua edirəm ki, ulu yaradanın köməyi ilə dünyamız bu çətinliklərdən
Sheikh al-Islam Allah.
Sheikh al-Islam would like to thank you immensely.
Ben size teşekkür etmek isterdim.
Although the translation was not quite clear, but we promise that the translation will be provided and will be made available on the website of the ISESCO, and this problem can be solved easily. You said that the topic, this topic of this forum is quite important and shows the awareness that has been here. I would like to thank you for your contributions and for your nice words. We would like to move on to Dr. Ahmed Al-Tayyib, Sheikh Al-Azhar, that will be presented by Dr. Muhammad Al-Hassawi, the president of the Azhar University. The floor is yours, sir. Go ahead. In the name of Allah, most merciful, most compassionate, peace and blessing be on our Prophet, his kith and kin. Honorable DG Dr. Salim Mohammed bin Malik, DG of ISESCO, the honorable attendees, peace and blessing be upon you. In the beginning, I would like to thank you immensely for the invitation extended to me to talk about the importance of moral values in confronting the crises, more particularly moral crises and health crises, and more particularly that stem really. This is due to discrimination, hatred, and also and conflicts that have been prevailing all throughout the world. And we are hoping to establish that peace and fraternity will prevail. And so the points and the fingers of blame, the fingers of blame really are pointing to the and religions have come here to really create an appropriate environment whereby everyone can live regardless of his creed of faith. They can live as brothers. The relationship holding between people is a relationship of tolerance and brotherhood, and there is no room and no place in Islam for conflicts or for hatred or for intolerance or for military action. So, because the logic underpinning the Quran says that people have created God has created people with different faith. So people cannot really be created with just one faith. Moral values, ladies and gentlemen, have been given a place of pride in all theological books, and values have been really focused on by our prophets. But as you do know, that our communities and societies today are really suffering from a problem of ethics. And the religious bodies are also working to correct these deficiencies, and people are calling for more solidarity in order to overcome the challenges. And all these really couldn't have come to the fore without the COVID-19. COVID-19 has really taught us quite an important lesson morally from a moral perspective to coordinate our efforts, more particularly then we need to really create an appropriate environment where people are going to help each other. And so the world of today badly needs to consolidate these lofty values, and religious leadership is quite an important player in this, in boosting solidarity. And this is what has been achieved through the alliance of that has been signed by the Sheikh of Al-Azhar and the Pope of the Vatican last year, more particularly. And people now realize the historical role of played by religious institutions during the crisis, and which has become quite clear in the fight against corona virus. And virus requires all efforts to be combined in order to really limit its spread. And so then the World Initiative, human initiative that has been launched by the Higher Council to launch a clear message that humanity can come to a consensus that is profitable for all. Millions of people have benefited from this initiative, and praying God so that God bestows his blessings on humans. And I am honored and privileged to really convey to you and convey to you the message of the Grand Imam, who was unable to make it to be with us to take part in this important event. I'd like to thank you for your attention, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much indeed to Dr. Ahmed Tayyib, and to you in particular, Mohammed Hassawi, President of the University of Al-Azhar. You mentioned in your words that ethical solidarity is quite important during a crisis period, and also divine religions have come in order to strengthen the bonds existing between humans. And that the pandemic, COVID-19, has really has focused its attention on the role of solidarity. I'd like to thank you, and would like to move on to Ali Ben Naimi. The floor is yours.
صوت معالي الدكتور.
لا هو بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of God,
رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد
peace
وعلى
be
آله
upon
وصحبه أجمعين.
His Prophet,
فخامة الرئيس إدريس إبي رئيس
Your
جمهورية
Excellency,
معالي الأخ الدكتور
President of Chad,
المدير العام
Excellency,
لمنظمة العالم
Director
الإسلامي
General of ISISCO,
التربية والعلوم والثقافة أصحاب المعالي أصحاب
Excellencies,
أصحاب السعادة
ladies and gentlemen, dear brothers and sisters,
تحية
faith,
سلام ومحبة من أبو ظبي.
may peace be upon you and my greetings from Abu Dhabi. I would like to particularly thank ISISCO for having launched this initiative, for having gathered us here in this platform to discuss the role of religious leaderships in the face of a crisis. And this is the best time to organize such a meeting because this pandemic is affecting humanity, is targeting humanity as a whole in total disrespect of borders and of nationalities. This is why we need to face this in a comprehensive, in a general way, because no one can face this pandemic alone. And we have noticed, we have seen that all nations, all countries were in shock and were fearful when this pandemic has befallen on us. This is why religion is a source of inspiration, is a source of guidance. So no one can just disregard the role of religion. But religious leaderships should be and should shoulder their responsibilities and need to make of religions as way of common action, common principles. All religions encompass lofty and noble values, and all religions have values and ethics in common. So religious leaders now have the role and have the responsibility to these morals and these principles in common. We need to work as one team in order to face and to surpass this pandemic. And there are 2 points I would like to focus on here in terms of leadership. Religious leadership should be aware of their roles and the limits of these roles. This pandemic was a crisis for all, but the number, the type of challenge is different from one region to another, from one um, country to another. So religious leaderships should respect the place, the space, and the time where this challenge takes place. For example, solutions for Emirates would not be valid for Senegal or for another country. So these dimensions need to be respected. The second point, in the faces of the crisis, we need to respect specialities. Religious leaderships have played a very noble role in terms of religion, but they should be aware of the role of others. For medics and experts of pandemics, and they need to respect the expertise of those. Yes, edicts are good, in line with the maqasid and the objectives of Sharia, and to guide these medics. So these leaderships, religious leaderships, should have tolerance and should have respect for other expertise and specialities. And I would like to conclude by saying that religious leaderships also need to respect political leaderships in their decisions facing the crisis. As I said, one decision is nice and is good for one situation in one country, but not for another country or other circumstances. So the countries need to be sovereign, and their political leadership needs sovereignty in order to make their decisions. And the religious aspect is one aspect, but there are other aspects. So religious leaderships need to respect national leaderships and political leaderships. I wish your forum full success, and once again, I'd like to reiterate my thanks to you, Mr. Director.
Thanks very much indeed for these beautiful words. You mentioned that religious leadership should work towards establishing peace and friendship, and that we need to work as a one team. Really, each one is respecting the other in terms of its specificity, and also in terms of and there is need also for religious leadership to have quite a lot of I, I would like to thank immensely the Dr. Muhammad Abdul Karim Laisa and also Dr. Ali Naimi, the president of the Muslim League, for their support and also to this international conference. And I would like to thank all speakers. Special thanks are extended to the President of the Republic of Chad for his participation and also providing us with his address. And I'd like to thank all those who have taken really and participated. I would like to introduce Dr. Abdullah bin Araf to really chair the first session in this very important event. And the floor is yours. This is the end of the first session. Well, thanks very much indeed, DG Dr. Salim Mohammed bin Malik. I would like to thank you, and I'd like to wish you well. His Excellency President Driss Déby, Your Excellencies, we are going to kickstart the first session, more particularly dealing with the best initiatives and practices of religious institutions throughout the COVID-19 crisis to address the negative impact of this crisis. And in the beginning, I would like to give the floor to His Eminence Dr. Mustafa Ben Hamza, member of the Higher Council of Scholars and chairman of the local council of scholars of Wujda. The floor is yours, sir. In the name of Allah, most merciful, most compassionate, peace and blessing be on our prophet, his kith and kin. In the beginning, I would like to thank immensely His Excellency, the DG of ICESCO, for the invitation extended to me to take part in this very important session, and has prepared all the work. And I would like to thank immensely the excellencies, the ministers, and also the religious leaders, and also those of you attending this important meeting. And I would like to say that it is in the nature of the Muslim human being to really go through crises, and also his experience really has resulted in quite many positive experiences. And what we can deduce and infer from this, that God has his wisdom, and when God sends something really to test humans. And people are tested on a daily basis by God, more particularly, and this is the reason we see what has been what God said. Really, perhaps God really prevented you from getting something, and He provided you with something else, and probably God really is testing us. And we need not overlook all these things. We know that an evil within an evil there is good in it, then good and evil are intertwined and mixed, and we can derive good from evil. And in general, we can say that this pandemic really it has hit the world. Its impact was not really the same all throughout the world, but mm, people have been hard hit in different ways at different levels, and also people really have to come to agreement with what God has decided for us, and we need to do all we can, leave no stone unturned in order to cope with this crisis. Quite a lot of diseases and quite a lot of problems, even suicides are taking place, but we need to accept God's decision, and this is a virtue of religion. We need to resort to spiritual things in order to explain things, and when we notice that this reality, like COVID-19, people stick to ethics and stick to religion in times of crises, and people and nations that have been able to preserve the families and the family cell. God has said, God has made of your family a place where you can live, and in your family you will find all the resources, you will find all the what you need, and people living in families but those who live without families, and they live in seclusion, they don't find a place to go to in the absence of the family, and this is why quite important the family. And so Muslim families have preserved the family cell, more particularly a family is a source of comfort, and so the family is a blessing from God, more particularly when in crisis time, and then more particularly solid ties of the family can help you really weather the storm, so to speak, and this is not seen in other communities where the family cell is not important, and so at least in the Islamic world, families keep to themselves, they keep really together, and they really and they provide a solution to the problems, and all this really so in so far as we are really we believe in religion. Religion can be used to fight against this pandemic, and we our Islamic community has seen quite a lot of conflicts, Perhaps this is not the appropriate place for the Islamic Ummah. Islamic Ummah should come together. This Islamic Ummah needs to be united rather than dispersed. This Islamic Ummah needs to come together rather than act in everyone on his own. And if, we need to solve all the problems, and this is an appropriate time to call upon Muslims to unite and to stop the fighting, because fighting will only lead to the weakening of our Islamic religion, and really we need to come together, and would like to thank you. Thanks very much indeed.
And now, Doctor, you have mentioned a very important point and said, may God have prevented you from something, but at the same time, He endowed you with many things. Now I give the floor to Abdeslam Abadi, Secretary General of the Islamic World Consortium. You have the floor. In the name of God. Salutations to you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear brothers and sisters in faith. I would like to focus on the role of religious leaderships, men and women, in their societies, in the faces of this pandemic and this crisis. But first of all, to I would like to say that humans are made of body and or spirit and mind, and this is very important for people to be aware of this in order to be and to be um, to live in peace. And we have heard many important and many interesting ideas, and the focus was put on fairness, on justice, on rights, and this is of paramount importance. And it in the hadith, you are not a believer unless you love for yourself what you love for your brothers. And the consortium is an institution of a collective institution of ijtihad, and we have been in action for more than 35 years now, and we have magazine, and publish we have published 86 books, and more than 86. So it is clear that such a forum is very important for scholars, and it is very important because they come out with resolutions, and our consortium has done throughout its history many efforts, and we have detailed all this in a book published recently on the um, role of the consortium in a construction of a system of creed of principles and of uh, precepts. And the scholars having participated in this fulfill all the conditions of religious scholars. And facing this pandemic and concerning this pandemic, our consortium has organized a specific forum on this, and we have discussed in detail the crisis with the participation of scholars and of uh, doctors, and more than 24 recommendations have come out from this forum, and thanks to God, it was echoed in the media in our country. And this is very important because scientific analysis that is used in our work is playing a particular role. Religious leaderships have participated in many meetings, and this forum, your forum, is a special, is very important initiative from your organization of ICISCO, and then the leadership of Mr. Salim ibn Muhammad al-Malik. Dr. Salim ibn Muhammad al-Malik has made huge strides in this field. This is why I seize this opportunity to thank you and to thank your organization for your initiatives, and particularly this initiative, this forum with the participation of the World Islamic League and other organizations. And this shows that now we are discussing a very important topic, and that the role to be played by leadership is very important. And this is also very interesting, particularly that we will have a declaration at the end of this forum. And I hope and I wish you full success to your meeting, and may peace be upon you. Thank you, Dr. Al-Abadi. You have mentioned in your word, and you have your respected time. Thank you. You have mentioned that humans are made of a body and a spirit and a mind, and this discussion and any discussion should bear in mind this principle. And you have also spoken about your institution and the publications published by your institution, more than 86 books. Thank you, Doctor. Now I give the floor to Dr. Faisal bin Abd al-Rahman Muammar al-Ami, Secretary General of Malik Abdullah Center of Dialogue between Civilizations and Religions, and it has a long and interesting experience. You have the floor. Go.
I'm honored and privileged in the beginning to really extend appreciation and gratitude to the ICISCO, to the DG, and also
يعني
to
سيسكو يا
Dr.
وشات بنا
and to the Islamic League.
İslam Cigası turasına teşekkür.
For the organizing such an important forum, and for the nice efforts. Is it possible to put the microphone on the table, because there is interference? Thank you. To find appropriate solution to COVID-19 pandemic, which resulted in the death of 500,000 people throughout the world, and perhaps its impact will continue for the years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, this pandemic has revealed quite a number of facets, particularly throughout the world. We saw its impact on the most vulnerable segments of our communities, more particularly the youth and the elderly, and more particularly there is need to enhance the healthcare systems in all the corners of the world. And the pandemic has also resulted in boosting intolerance and racism, and more particularly its economic impacts will continue, the impacts accruing from pandemic. And so there are quite a number of questions that can be raised, more particularly on the role to be played by religious institutions in collaborating with in political institutions. And to answer these questions, I'd like to refer to three sectors in which religious organizations can play a major role. In religious education is quite important in coping with the problem. On the basis of the relevant experience, religious leadership have accumulated, and more particularly in dealing with crises. Also, the second thing is that they have available expertise that will make it possible for them to take appropriate decision in order to build peace and stability in the world. And this is the reason why people resort to religious institutions to avail themselves of counts of advice. And more particularly, we have seen the organization of virtual fora, more particularly dealing with daily practices daily practices, and more particularly in dealing with the protocols of avoiding more contamination, such as social distancing, taking all the necessary precautions, and also capitalizing on awareness enhancement. And there is also focus on appropriate religious practices that will prevent people from being contaminated and also not impact negatively on their religious practices. And this has been the case. Religious institutions have played a major role. They have focused on social distancing as a means to avoid contamination, and religious institutions and religious leaderships particularly have a major role to play in order to boost and fight against frustration from the incapacity to find vaccines against COVID available. And people people, when they resort to spiritual deeds, then they are able to fight against frustration. They are able to fight against quite a number of evils, and so there are most important orientations really have made it possible for some religious organizations to apologize for the orientations they have taken in coping with COVID-19. What is important is to see religious organizations working hand in hand with political decision makers in order to find appropriate solutions. Religious organizations have a major role to play within the community of their religious disciples, and also in building bridges of communication, more particularly that will make it possible for the grassroots communities to receive and assimilate and grasp the messages in view of the increasing tensions and increasing pressures created by COVID-19. There are many religious organizations that have made available food for the most vulnerable segments of the community available. And so religious organizations are also have played a major role in organizing communities and also providing help and support to the needy, more particularly availing themselves of religious networks, and we are seeing quite a lot of work in the human sector, in the human help sector, and so there is need also to collaborate with other international organization, particularly international religious organization, in order to fight together against COVID-19. So we need to focus more and more on awareness in order to really provide the best example to emulate and to be emulated by everyone in coping with the pandemic. What is important is to really prevail a spirit of peace and stability, and focus on the protocols of really of health measures so that we cannot be infected. So we need also to deal with the economic sector that has really been heavily shaken by the COVID, and so we need not attack religious organizations just because COVID is here with us. And so I think we have seen some examples of, and so and COVID has become the virus of hatred, so to speak, and we are really trying to correct this deficiency by waging awareness enhancement campaigns on religious basis, of focusing more and more to narrow the gap holding between those in the marginalized in the community, and also focusing on interfaith dialogue. Our center has our of International Islamic Fiqh Academy has also launched quite a number of projects so that these projects can deliver, and the center has also focused on fighting against hate-based discourses, and this focusing on the youth through projects is quite important. I would like to thank you, and I'd like to thank all your guests, really thanking you for giving me an opportunity to take part in this interfaith dialogue. Thank you.
Your Excellency, for this paper, and you have spoken about the role of religious leaderships in many aspects, in guidance, and also bringing relief to people in need, and then in terms of perspective, in terms of analysis on the long term of this crisis. Thank you for your paper. And now I give the floor to Mr. Christoph Stöckelberger, the founder and director of Globethics, and this is a institution from Switzerland. You have the floor, Dr. Stöckelberger, Professor Stöckelberger.
Excellencies, colleagues, brothers and sisters in faith, it's my great honor to speak to this honorable event. I congratulate ISESCO, the Muslim World League, and the Muslim World Community Council for the important initiative of this webinar, and also for the draft declaration on the role of religious leadership in face of crisis, which I read with great interest. It's my honor also to speak just after His Excellency Dr. Faisal Al-Muammar, as we cooperate with CAICID already, and we hope to cooperate with many of you in future. I represent the global network on ethics called Globethics Net Foundation, based in Geneva, Switzerland, as its founder and president. We are a truly global and interfaith community. Among the about 200,000 registered participants, we have about 30% of Muslim in our network. We have Christians, we have Hindu, we have Buddhists, we have non-faith-based persons. We fully support the commitments of the draft declaration of today's event. The commitment to universal ethics, that's at the core of globethics.net. the second commitment to the preservation of human dignity, and also the affirmation of the 5 moral principles, which is mentioned in these different presentations already: faith, peace, solidarity, tolerance, and equality, with a focus on gender equality. Global Ethics Net, we focus on ethics in higher education, and that's why also I'm interested to cooperate with many of you who represent universities, Islamic universities and others. And we link the word ethics with 6 values. E stands for empowerment, T for transformation, H for holistic approach, I for integrity, C for competence, and S for sustainability. Now, what has this to do with our crisis and COVID-19 challenges? And I'd like to mention 3 aspects of implementing these universal values through responsible leadership of religious leaders in times of this COVID pandemic. The first is our link between religions and science and scientific cooperation. Some religious leaders and believers from all religions denied science and scientific cooperation with the argument that God alone can help in the pandemic. Disrespect of governmental policies provoked a lot of infections, harm, and death. People who went to mosque, who went to churches against the policy of their governments, and created a lot of harm. But science and faith are not opposite. Science can be an instrument of the Almighty and benevolent to serve humanity. And I think we as religious leaders around the globe have to stand up together, as already many did, and declare their yes to science and scientific cooperation in order to reduce risks, harm, and death. And we can be proud also the Islamic world contributed a lot to scientific research and progress. And I think the Christians do, the Buddhists do, and we have to emphasize that faith and science are not opposite, but complementary. The second point of my 3 points, faith and fairness and respect. COVID-19 led to a number of conspiracy theories, and that's not new. All pandemic lead to that because it's a situation of uncertainty, a situation where we seek orientation, and then we attack the Muslim in India, we attack other vulnerable groups. In history of pandemics, it was often the Jewish community accused of being the reason and the root cause of the pandemic. They are kind of attacked as scapegoats. And this violates human rights, human dignity, and the value of peace. So if we, as community gathered in this webinar, want to stand up for dignity and human rights and peace, we need to stand up against these conspiracy theories together, and also against this scapegoat mechanism, because all of our religions can be affected, especially when we are in a minority situation. Minority Muslim communities, a majority Hindu or Buddhist world, minority Christians in a majority Muslim world. So we have a common interest to stand up and say yes to fairness, scientific honesty, and living with the uncertainty by trusting in the divine Almighty. I think we as faith-based people, we know that faith in the Almighty is the response to this kind of scapegoat mechanism. And that leads me to the last point, leadership with integrity. COVID-19 has clearly shown the difference between irresponsible and responsible leaders. Irresponsible leaders first care for their own power and for their re-election and deny the need for careful, consistent national policies to limit the pandemic. Responsible leaders on the other side first care for the people, their lives, including, of course, prosperity and restart of economy and sustainable planning. So we as religious leaders around the globe together have to stand up against the abuse of power for personal interests and for a hidden political agenda, as some political leaders try now to play their political agenda on the back of the lives of COVID affected people and say yes to leaders with integrity. And I think that we also have to see as also a gender dimension. In the declaration that we will adopt hopefully today, it said that equality includes gender equality, and that leads also to women in leadership position in all sectors of society, in business, in politics, in academic world and religious world. GlobeEthicsNet as global network on ethics is committed to contribute to these goals. We offer our cooperation with ISESCO, the Muslim World League, the World Muslim Communities Council, and especially also the universities around represented in this webinar. I thank you so much, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Stockelberger, for this very, very interesting contribution. And you have mentioned the values required from religious leaderships. No, religious action is viable. It is in conjunction with religious values. And also you have spoken about tolerance and respect. And another value is on honesty and integrity that required from these religious leaderships. Thank you very much for your contribution. And thank you for having accepted this invitation and for having adopted this declaration. And now we have finished the first academic session, and we move to the second academic session on regenerative and future features of religious thought and working mechanisms to make use of crisis gains and address their adverse repercussions. And my colleague, His Excellency Khalid Fatah Al-Rahman, will moderate this session. You have the floor. In the name of God, we start the second academic session. I would like to thank everybody, every participants. I would like you to respect the 5 minutes for your papers, and I'd like to start with the paper of His Excellency Mohammed Al-Habbash, the Judge of Judges in Palestine. You have the floor. Dr. Mahmoud Al-Habbash. In the name of God, and peace be upon his prophet and his king. Ladies and gentlemen, may peace of Allah be upon you. Thank you. Thank you to the organizers of this webinar in this forum. Organized in a time we are in a real need of this kind of initiative, not the Islamic Ummah only, but the world as a whole. Crises and pandemics and their repercussions is old as humanity itself. Crises appear in poor societies and in rich societies, in developed countries and underdeveloped countries. And each crisis requires for ways and means to face it in an adopted, appropriate way. In at least, if we cannot uh, uh, fight it and at least to value the positive aspects during this crisis. Now, on the role of religious leaderships, which is the topic of this webinar, in the face of crisis or in managing as a team of the crisis. This is a central role, and it is all the more important. These leaderships are considered as model. Of course, the first model is our prophet. Maybe may peace be upon him. He is the model in playing this role because he's the first leader, religiously speaking and politically speaking, the first leader of the Islamic Ummah. Consequently, religious leaderships should inspire their action and the solutions from the prophet and actions of the prophet. These religious leaderships need to have a global vision in order to face the pandemic and make an analysis or at least participate in putting in place this global vision to face all the kinds of crises, the health crisis and other crises. Religious leaderships should first have a vision of the future, at least theoretically, in order to face. So we need perspective. We need to follow the method of our prophet in facing crisis. And this method, if we go further into the hadith of the prophet and the life of a prophet, it's a method which is comprehensive, which is complete, that offers us rules and a basis and a comprehensive method to face crisis, to manage it, to take advantage of its positive aspects, and to curb as as possible as we can do that to curb the repercussions. And there are many examples that I cannot mention here, but this is just a hint on the capacities of religious leaderships. And here I'm speaking about Islamic leaderships. Of course, the other leaderships of the other religions have their capacities, but I would like to focus on Islamic leaderships, wh- which have as a model our prophet. And I was honored. I was honored to prepare a search, a study, and this is this study. This is a book, 900 pages on the Prophet's method in managing crisis. So our duty, maybe this might be one of the recommendations of this webinar. Our duty is to organize many conferences, many webinars, scientific webinars on crisis management, not only in political crisis management centers, but in educational systems and educational institutions in managing crisis, and particularly the foundations, the principles adopted by our prophet in managing a crisis. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this idea, and thank you for this initiative. And I wish full success to your meeting. I hope this meeting will contribute in putting in place the principles of crisis management. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
منهجية متكاملة تفيدنا في التخلص من الأزمات.
Us to deal with crisis and benefit quite a lot. I'm honored and privileged, to give the floor to Dr. Idris Fassi Al-Fihri, Vice President of the University of Qarawiyyin, Kingdom of Morocco. The floor is yours, Dr. Fassi Fihri Idris. In the name of Allah, most merciful, most compassionate, peace and blessing be on our Prophet, his kith and kin. Good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen, honorable dear friend, president of this session, the honorable ambassador, dear attendees, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you well. This presentation that will just provide you with few bullet points on the role to be played by organizations during crisis of time, and I'd like to begin by saying to talk about the two concepts in this the concept of religious leadership and the concept of crisis. With regard to the concept of pertaining to religious leadership, encompassing quite many complications, and it is what people agreed upon is that religious leadership really is based on quite a lot of expertise it has accumulated, and also dealing with the laws and more particularly dealing with religion, and also paying attention to respect, and also really putting the public interest before the personal interest. And the second thing I would like is to talk about things that have come in the Quran, and what has the two concepts that have come in is the issue of fitna or rebellion, or particularly what create the difference between fitna and crisis. Crisis refers to the existence of a problem. Then we need to look at the root causes underpinning these crises, and there is a huge difference between fitna, rebellion, and crisis. These two concepts really, these two crises really, we particularly Allah has provided us with an opportunity to test ourselves, particularly, and to test human being when a crisis occurs or a pandemic occurs. Religious leadership needs to pay attention to things in coping with two things: preventive and prevention and cure. As far as prevention is concerned, is dealing with the dissemination of awareness enhancement lessons, and the second thing is is to prevent crises. And Allah says in this, in connection with the role to be played by religious leaders, really, these religious leaders believe in religion, and they use religion as a platform to cope with health problems. Avoid dissension, avoid dissent. Dissent can create havoc. Mm, uh, and in times of crisis. And this sentence, really, I don't want to go into the details. And so, what is quite important to highlight here is to focus on prevention. And since we are in the operating in the field of disseminating values of solidarity and values of brotherhood, and this is quite important will be highlighted in the draft declaration. And let's see what is really with there is prevention and there is treatment of a problem. More particularly, treatment is quite important, and this regard to the obligations of religious leaderships in crisis times, obligations. These obligations really these obligations are based on quite a lot of progress that has been achieved, and also based on customs, and also based on international laws, and all these has come within the development process of humanity in terms of and there are quite many other things. And so what is important here is that these developments has made it possible to know what was in the past quite impossible. These developments, scientific development, has made it possible to really and this scientific development has made it possible to widen the scope of these crises and what we are dealing with within the context of COVID-19 in terms of restrictions imposed on people's movements, and also respecting the protocols of not being contaminated, and also being mindful of ways and means how to preserve one's own health is quite important. And so and this also requires more this quite more belief in the possibility of overcoming. I would like to thank you immensely for your attention. God and peace and blessing be on you.
Thank you, Dr. Al-Fatih, for this paper and the distinction between the words of a crisis and the concept of fitna, discord, or tila, affliction, as a trial and as a test. And he also spoken about the duties of prevention and duties of treatment. Thank you to you, Professor Dries Fassi Al-Fihri. And now we give the floor to Mr. Kamal Mohammed Abid from Sudan. You have the floor, sir. In the name of God, and peace be upon his prophet. Thank you to ISIS for this initiative, and to its Director General and the staff of the organization ISISCO, thank you for your efficacy and for the very good organization, and this shows the high level of sophistication of this organization in dealing with crises and problems of our Ummah. This webinar on the topic, the role of religious leaders in the face of a crisis, and particular the COVID-19 pandemic. And in this webinar, we will find these key words on which we can base our thoughts and our analysis. And the objective of this webinar is to reach this international solidarity, based on ethics, an international framework in order to fulfill for humanity this solidarity and these solutions. This shows that religions have resources, have mechanisms that have been tested facing these these pandemics and these crises. And the pandemic that we agreed that required for this lockdown, and this makes us to leads us to reconsider what we have done. Have these mechanisms respected the ethics, national experiences, and in order to fulfill and to reach this solidarity and this international solidarity, and in order to fight all the repercussions of this pandemics in all fields and aspects. I say that this experience leads us to look at the experiences of humanities and wonder what are the ways and means that humanity has chosen to use in case of a crisis or in a case of a pandemic or catastrophe. What happened is that the weak, those who are not capable of facing, are in a remote place, or they are not at the center of decision making. And those who are capable and who have the experience are at the center. So the first is we protect the weak. We put them in a place far from the crisis, from the problem, and then to give experience and to give the tools to those with no experience. The mistakes of this pandemic is that the world as a whole was or entered in a lockdown and led the army of the disease, afflicting people without any diagnosis. We don't know now the diagnosis. The weapons used are not successful. So the choice was to put people in the lockdown and fate and wait for their fate. This is not an appropriate way. Religions, generally speaking, look at the problems and the repercussions possible, including or among these. We prepare we prepare for this kind of pandemics. We look in the ethics and the morals that have led to this kind of pandemic. The world in the in 2005, I think, starting in 2005, humanity was faced with AIDS, the disease of AIDS. What does it mean? Means that the human body has its own immunity, but this immunity can be attacked by a kind of disease. And all studies on AIDS have concluded that the disease was made of many diseases, and it was the result on unnatural and non-ethical, non-moral relationships, and that's what caused AIDS. AIDS. And humanity was able to take some measures, and this was enough for humanity to increase its needs and to strengthen its the tools in order to face these diseases which are caused by the non-respect of morals and ethics. Thank you to Dr. Kamal Mohammed for this paper, and in which you said that we can learn from the experiences and the history and the diseases known by humanity. And we need to make sure that we respect ethics and morals in facing this crisis. Now, I give the floor to Dr. Saad Al Hakim from Lebanon. You have the floor, Doctor.
In the name of Allah, most merciful, most compassionate, peace and blessing be on our Prophet, his kith and kin. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you all. It is quite clear for humans that are covering history that a pandemic, a global pandemic such as COVID-19 requires revisiting the world again, particularly after the First World War and after Second World War and after the ICT revolution. Now the fourth revolution represented by the pandemic. Is this just a pandemic that will really that will vanish one day, is projected or has a timeline to vanish one day, and after which we will return back to deal with other? Or are we today, are we dealing with a cluster that can, or a pandemic that will last for years to come? And it's quite important to see and say that this this COVID-19 has brought together the political leadership to work hand in hand with religious leadership, more particularly because our destiny is really in the question, and there is also the role to be played by academic studies, particularly, and also through focusing on the human being, and also deriving quite a lot of expertise from human experience in order to move and focus more and more on joint management of COVID-19. We need to focus on the human being and ways and means how to strengthen human being, more particularly as a human being, as a group of people, in order to really, we need not be individualistic, and we need to derive quite a lot of benefits from science, and this quite important moment requires from us a complementarity of the work of religious leaderships in Islam and in the interfaith religions. And so we need to focus on the human being, particularly this human being needs to have ownership over his destiny, and capable enough and equipped enough to use his brain in order to overcome the pandemic. As long as a human being is independent economically and also is independent from a perspective of managing a pandemic, he will be able to muddle through appropriately, and he will be able to build himself. And so there is need to focus our attention on responsibility at the individual level. Really, a human being is responsible for action, and also and human being is also responsible for the deficiency he creates and for the shortages he is responsible of. A human being needs, by definition, to change his behavior in order to disseminate the spirit of peace and justice in the world. And there is room for collaboration between all religious leadership, and there is need for the human being to have the right to understand. The right to understand is quite important, more particularly from the perspective of the religious obligation. And a human being has the right to know why he is praying. What is the purpose of praying? And so there is and then a person needs to understand what's going on all around him through the mass media and also through newspapers. And we need to provide the human being with the information that he needs from a religious perspective, and also he needs to be really provided with the scientific information that is quite important for him. If a human being is incapable to change the course of the reality of a disease on the ground, but he needs also to understand and achieve four things. And he needs to be really to express solidarity. He needs also to be helpful. And so I'd like to focus on two tools that are quite important, that involving religious organization, and also so developing acquaintances. Particularly acquaintances will help provide answers to quite a number of questions. What are the red lines beyond which we cannot go? And how can we live together? How can we be tolerant to each other? And so then there are we need to avail ourselves of the expertise that is available in order to foster tolerance. We need to educate people on good values, on the freedom, on equality, equity, and also on tolerance, on the really on the commitment on the commitment to as a full-fledged citizen. And so we need to work. There is a lot of work to be done in the field of religious leadership. We need to really increase the returns of the work that is carried out by religious leadership. And finally, I'd like to thank those behind the convening of this virtual forum, and also and peace and blessing be on you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for Dr. Saad Al Hakim. Thank you for this cognitive context on the humanity and the sphere and circle of human responsibility, and the importance of understanding spiritual and religious duties. And also, I would like to thank all of you for your contributions during this academic session. And now I give the floor to my brother and my colleague Abdel Ilah ibn Arafa. Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Ambassador. And now we move to the third academic session. And I call on my colleague to moderate this session. Thank you, Your Excellencies. I am honored to moderate this third academic session with the participation of members and representatives of leaderships from the three religions and representative of many institutions. And the topic of this session is on the prospects of joint action between the different religions, leaderships, and institutions across the world in order to face a crisis. So this third academic session will start with the contribution of His Excellency Dr. Sultan Aramiti, Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Elders. You have the floor. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I was very pleased to receive the invitation from ISISCO to participate in this webinar. I wrote a paper, but maybe it's too long for this webinar, but I'll try to sum it up. And the title of my paper is the role of leaderships in facing crisis. So during a crisis, we know better a society, and because these crises are the real test for the strength of the societies. And throughout history, we have noticed that after a crisis, there is a very important evolution and development of human consciousness. After two wars, for example, we have seen the birth of the United Nations League and the covenants calling for justice and human rights and many covenants. Today, we need to wonder uh, what will the result after this crisis? Sure, sure, there's a dynamics in the scientific spheres and within universities and within labs. Of course, we will notice a change, a huge change, and we have noticed that there are many regulations and many tools that have been put in place. But now, the urgent question asked by individuals and in the media, what what is the change or how um, religious leaderships or religious action how did they change? And this is a legitimate question. What is important for these leaderships is a responsible message, uh, and also to be uh, to to endeavor in order to raise, to elevate the status of humans. The Grand Imam of Al Azhar has made a speech, and it was very interesting on ethics and message to the spirit and to the mind of humans, to their reason, whatever their religions. So what we need is solidarity to overcome this this crisis and to look and to consider the weak, the displaced person, refugees. Many events took place during this crisis. And another important message is to look at all the actions taken in order to get out of this crisis. I've chosen a number of examples. We all agree on technological evolution, development. But the question, or what is important, is that during this crisis, this technological evolutions has taken has taken a more important role. So we need to pay attention to the place given to this technological um, development. And there is also another important aspect is the role, the responsibility of the person. Persons should should be responsible of not transmitting this disease. You need to respect the social distanciation, for example. And other aspect is to reconsider our priorities. The priority of health is key. Now, uh, we all agree on that. Uh, Economy, politics, and religious action should play a role in preserving human health. Another aspect, important aspect, is the importance of on cultural consciousness and awareness. Now, the awareness of individuals has become a comprehensive system, as if the individual is a society or a community, the responsibility of individuals towards themselves, towards their families, towards their societies. And this should be uh, uh, capitalized and developed after, inshallah, the crisis. I believe that this crisis a real opportunity uh, to call again for an international award solidarity in order to face together the crisis facing humanity. To conclude with, I would like to reiterate my thank to Dr. Salem, and I have a request. The first request is to generalize the paper and to publish it, and the second request, if I may, is to continue this kind of initiatives and that and to organize other workshops on the same topic. And we are totally ready to host the second edition of this webinar. And thank you to you
Well,
all.
thanks very much indeed, Dr. Sultan Remiti, for this contribution, in which you focused on quite a number of important things, more particularly with regard to the reclassification of the priorities, and so particularly the religious awareness, that as a priority, so that human beings really make or improve the reality on the ground. I'd like to move on to Dr. Al-Qadi Muhammad Abd Salam, the Secretary General of the Higher Committee of Human Fraternity. Human Fraternity, Dr. Al-Qadi Muhammad Abd Salam, the floor is yours, sir. If you, Al-Qadi Muhammad Abd Salam, Secretary General of the Higher. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Salim, the DG of ICESCO, I would like to thank you for the invitation extended to me. Excellencies, I'd like to really greet you on behalf of the Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Elders. We hope that we will find a solution to the problem of COVID-19 that will really help us cope with this problem. and I'm sure that this important forum comes at a very sensitive time, and COVID-19 has shown the reality on the ground and has highlighted the weakness of humanity. So if we collaborate together, we will be able to overcome a number of issues and solve this forum with its topic. Particularly is quite important, and I'm sure that the religious leadership is quite important in really shaping the behavior of people and really disseminating the appropriate values. And I think, is this quite possible? It is possible. So the world in which we live today, what we have seen in terms of genuine dialogue that has been unleashed, particularly involving Azhar Sharif and the Vatican, is quite an important example that really highlight the importance of tolerance. And so the signing of a charter in February 2019 in Abu Dhabi, this document really has shown that the religious leaderships have a role to play in really. There are quite thousands and thousands of religious leaderships who speak with one voice, particularly in order to really see and that tolerance is focused on. And I think this can be a source of pride. It is possible for humanity to come around one thing, and I think they can agree on a number of shared principles and shared values in which they believe, and I do consider that it's quite possible for religious leaderships to really come together on these issues. And so there are quite a number of changes that will be witnessed by the world, and if it is possible to focus on building bridges for more collaboration in the future, and so we need not work in isolation, really, because religious creeds are the driving locomotives that unify the work of everyone. And we launched an international prize. This is an international prize bearing the name of Sheikh Zayed, particularly targeting the organizations that have been working to consolidate the work of human. And here I would like to ask a question. In our capacities as religious leaders, as institutions, are we capable to inch into a collaborative work? This is a question that is worthy raising, particularly, I suppose, that on the basis of our religious values, we can stop and focus on developing all these things. And so it is the right for every institution to show what it can do. But we can act as a one team, but while preserving the things that are special to each of these organizations. And finally, I would like to thank the ISISCO, particularly for this quantum leap efforts and for organizing this forum that is a platform for sharing quite a lot of opinions and ideas, and particularly to be innovative. Once again, I would like to thank my brother, the DG, Dr. Salim Al-Malik, for his fine work, and he I think he has been really a master in really organizing these events. And I would like to thank the team working with the DG of ICSGO, and peace and blessing of Allah be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Qadi Abdulsalam, Secretary General of the Higher Committee of Human Fraternity, to answer your question. We are serious, of course. ISISCO wants to contribute to give something new in this field, and I think that we are going to have a good impact through this international solidarity charter. Thank you to you, my brother, once again. And now I give the floor to Monsieur Khalid Akasha, Director of the Commission of Religious Relations with Muslims in the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue. You have the floor. Your mic. Your mic, Monsieur. Yeah. Okay. Dear brothers and sisters from Rome and from the Vatican, I send you my greetings, greetings of peace on behalf of the President of the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue, and I thank you for your invitation to participate in this webinar. Christians, as you know, do not belong to Jesus only, but they live through Jesus, and they endeavor to be the best representative of Jesus. Let me be your model and be inspired by my action. To his disciples, he said, "Do you know what I've done with you? You consider me as your teacher and as your God, and it's a good thing. But if I were the teacher and the God, and I have washed your feet, but then you should wash your feet, each other's feet." So the Christian is called to be a model for the others, and the Christian is not or do not need to do any action to discredit Christianity or to discredit Christians. And the perspective of the future is one condition to be fulfilled in a leader. And we are in need now, during this crisis, we are in need of leaders and of models. The mic. I think we have lost. There's an interruption. No, we can hear you. Yes. So now I need to sum up the Christian vision of leadership and responsibility. Leadership is a service to be granted and to need to consider the public interest and the interest of others before one's interest. We as believers, we need to look for what is common between us. And thanks God, we have many points in common between Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. The organizers of this webinar have focused uh, on the role of leaderships, and besides the necessity of solidarity between religious leaderships. And many participants have focused on that, the institutions of fraternity and the Mecca declaration of Mecca, and also the declaration of the Forum of Peace Building. And this common action calls for confidence, trust, and a common vision, and also to agree on the principles and the ways of working. And here I'd like to share with you a number of principles that are necessary as far as I'm concerned in order to build this international solidarity and even local. First, to strengthen trust and first, and second, and to consider action for this life and for the uh, life beyond, and also the importance of the cultural value system. And the fifth point is relief for the others and the brothers in one's faith and others in members of other faiths, and also focus on cooperation between faiths and also to serve the weak and the needy. And six is to distinguish and dissociate dawah and relief action, and also to dissociate religious dialogue and dawah, and then to help the youth uh, strengthen their principle of solidarity. We have lost Monseigneur. I think there's a connection problem. Monseigneur, are you there? Yes, yes. So the pave the way pave the way for people who are not members of our faith in order for them to participate in our action of relief and of help. And the last point is to open up towards the civil society. It is very important to cooperate with civil society. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think that the line is not very good, but we have understood the subjects and the topic of your contribution. You focus on a number of principles which are necessary as you believe in order to strengthen this ethical and moral solidarity between faiths and religious leaderships. And now I give the floor to Rabbi David Shlomo Rosen. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am profoundly grateful to our host, Dr. Salim Al-Malik, to Dr. Muhammad Karim Al-Issa, and Dr. Ali Rashid Al-Noemi for the honor in being able to participate in this very important virtual forum. Jewish tradition asserts an obvious truism that life is not about pleasure and it's not about pain. It's how we respond to pleasurable and painful challenges. Do they enable us to grow and to become more compassionate and more righteous and more noble? Or do they stultify us and make us more narrow and insular and selfish? COVID-19 has demonstrated powerfully this challenge. There have been two diametrically opposed responses. There are those who have become more narrow, more insular, more nationalistic, more self-obsessed, ethnocentric as a result of this challenge. But we have seen wonderful actions of solidarity beyond national, ethnic, and religious boundaries, reflecting and understanding that not only are we interconnected, but that we are mutually responsible for one another. And this pandemic has given powerful emphasis to this truism and this understanding. So many wonderful things have already been said, and I don't think that there's very much that I can add that is novel, but perhaps I could highlight some of the points that are made, especially by His Excellency Faisal al-Muamma, by Professor Stickelberger, and now by Monsignor Akasha. One of the things that we should derive in terms of the joint action between the different religious institutions and leadership, that is the topic that we are asked to address now, is the need to be able to find ways to advance collaboration, especially between the philanthropic organizations of our different religious communities. Each and every one of our religions within the family of Abraham, al-Kitab, does wonderful work in terms of charity, in terms of development, in terms of addressing health problems in the world. This interconnectedness that we understand, that we should understand so powerfully from this pandemic, should lead us to greater collaboration between the welfare institutions of our different religious traditions. This is important not only to become of our different parts, it is also a very important testimony. And this connects with the second point that I want to make. It is a testimony to the importance of interfaith collaboration. It is a testimony to the fact that no one of us is alone. It is a testimony to the fact that we must work together for the benefit of humanity. That is not only our obligation to humanity, it is our obligation to our own authentic faith tradition. And I say this connects to my second point, which was mentioned a little earlier, I think, by His Excellency Faisal al-Muamma and also by Professor Stickelberger. And that is the way this pandemic has been exploited by evil forces seeking to essentially spread hate and hostility amongst peoples. The way the pandemic has been exploited to emphasize, to highlight, to intensify stereotypes and to promote conspiracy theories. This is an affliction, a disease that is to be found within all our different communities. It is to be found between different sects within different religious communities, let alone between religions. It is not only our duty for all, as Muslims, Christians, and Jews, to be true and therefore honest in fighting against such scurrilous and destructive propaganda. It is also important for our own interests and well-being to be seen to fight against such falsehoods and lies. In other words, if there is an attack, let us say, against Sunnis by Shia or Shia by Sunnis, or Christian or Muslims, or against Jews, whoever it may be, if we are seen to respond together against such misrepresentation and against such stereotyping and scapegoating, then the response is so much more powerful. We need to enlist one another and not simply take on these challenges alone, nor feel that we are alone in the field to combat such conflict. The more there is cooperation in responding to these lies and these conspiracy theories, the more effective the forces of good and of humanity and of mutual respect will triumph over those evil elements. It is also part of our interreligious responsibility to be able to show that we are working together, and we will be more effective in fighting that if we do collaborate. By doing so, we will testify to our mutual respect for one another and our responsibilities as the different families in Al al-Bayt, families of the children of Ibrahim, of Al al-Kitab. And in that way, we can ensure that when we face threats of evil, not only can we, but we must work together, both to address the need, but also to address the perception, because perceptions create realities. And the more we are seen to work together, the more effective we will be. That is why this virtual forum is so important. It is the message we now have to be able to bring out to the world. The world needs to see us, Muslims, Christians, and Jews, collaborating together for the benefit of humanity. And that way, we truly glorify God's name and live up to the sublime messages of our religious traditions. Allah ma'akum.
شكرا
Very
جزيلا.
much indeed, Dr. The Rabbi David Shlomo Rosen, Director of the Department of Interreligious Affairs at the American Jewish Committee, would like to thank you immensely for your contributions, to which you called that Abraham's-based religions can provide us with answers, the needed answers, in order to weather the storm and the crisis, so that we can be, in order to achieve this, there are conditions that we need to fulfill, respect, and also overcoming issues pertaining to stereotypes and scapegoating, and these religions can provide us with the solutions to overcome these challenges. I'd like to thank you immensely for your contribution, and I would like to give at the end of this forum Dr. Hussein Muttalib from the National University of Singapore to talk to us in this virtual forum. The floor is yours, Dr. Hussein Muttalib.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and peace to all. And thank you so much for this invitation. You know, the challenge for being the final speaker in all seminars and conferences is that a lot of things you wanted to share has been taken up beautifully and intelligently by the earlier speakers. But in a feeling of goodwill for all of us, I'll try to reiterate some of these key points which I've been listening from beginning some 2 hours ago. I think the prospects for a joint action are indeed promising. Wa'id, inshallah. But we need to first address a few pertinent matters. Let me highlight just 3 of these matters. And I think for all the 3, the role of religious leaders and institutions is very important. 1, there is a need to identify some hurdles and challenges that lay in the path of interfaith collaboration. 2, there is a need to adopt a new moral and ethical approach in dealing with global crisis. And 3, for interfaith projects and programs to work and bear fruit, these projects must be simple, feasible, implementable. Let me delve a bit more on the 3 matters so raised. First, I think before we proceed with our noble intentions of forging international relations between interfaith communities the world over, it's imperative that we should identify the hurdles and challenges that lie in the path of joint action amongst different religions. And let's be frank and sincere about this. Here are 2 of the hurdles that comes to my mind. A, suspicion and resistance from segments of all religions to any form of interfaith collaboration. This is a reality. Religious leaders should convey the message to the followers that while we maintain our live and let live philosophy, and of course we have the right to believe that ours is the right religion, continuing to harbor suspicions against other faith communities and hence not wanting to work together to solve common problems of humanity is not an option. B, there's another hurdle to overcome: greater nationalistic zeal in protecting one's own self-interest at the expense of others. We see this very clearly during this COVID-19 pandemic. As some of the earlier speakers also raised this point, where some countries adopt an exclusive, inward-looking attitude in wanting to only help their own people, their own populations, at the expense of the world community. We should never forget one important fact of life today. Global crises such as this contagious pandemic necessitates a global collaborative response. That's the first issue, identifying hurdles and challenges in interfaith collaboration. The second issue that we need to be mindful of in order for joint actions can have a better chance to succeed relates to the approach that we should adopt, the muqaraba. By this, I mean the need to emphasize and drive home the message that collaborative interfaith efforts and ventures must incorporate the spiritual dimension in solving human crisis. Spiritual dimension. This is where our religious leaders and institutions are best suited to do. They are not merely shepherds physically, but messengers, ethically, morally. The common, highly secularized, materialistic approach in addressing issues of global disasters, pandemics, and other human crises must be tempered with acts that feed the hearts, that feed the souls of humanity. And finally, since we already have some broad frameworks and foundations of interreligious cooperation, such as what have been done by the Islamic world, examples like the Makkah Charter, the dialogue among religious cultures, and the document on human fraternity and world peace, and so on and so on. I think it's important if we can complement this with simple but meaningful projects and programs that leaders and peoples of all faiths can work together and then produce tangible results. Our joint efforts must go beyond lofty ideals, but let's be practical, let's be feasible, workable projects. In Mali, while international conferences that produces a creative, proactive ideas are certainly more than welcomed. For interfaith projects to work, there is no need to reinvent the wheel. Best practices, provable benchmarks are in fact already available today. Let us learn, let us step, let us benefit from them. Without adopting this down-to-earth pragmatic approach, I think our good intentions will come to naught, and the result will be the same, the vicious cycle of disappointment, of despair in wanting to get interfaith relations off the ground. So let's reiterate our key messages and appeals before I end. One, the prospects to see joint action amongst different religions and faith are indeed promising. Two, these projects, however, should be approached differently and must include what I call the moral compass. And three, our religious leaders, being figures that are respected by their followers, can and should exert their knowledge and wisdom upon their communions and communities. Our pluralistic, diverse world community will be better off, and I think all of us can agree to this, if and when all our religious leaders and religious institutions, not only in words, but in deeds, in practical doing things, getting things done, take up a higher moral ground and actively spread the universal message that all religions share of mutual respect, peace, love, and justice for all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran jazilan.
شكرا سعادة الأستاذ الدكتور حسين مطلب.
Thank you, Dr. Hussein Muttalib from the National University of Singapore for this paper on which you focus on three main points on the possibility of collaborative action, interfaith collaborative action based on defining the difficulties and common points, and then the comprehensive and spiritual approach in order to face this crisis and pandemic, based also on field action inspired by success stories and experiences, and also the prospects of interfaith projects. Thank you to all our speakers during this third academic session. Thank you for your contribution, and I give the floor now to Dr. Salim ibn Mohammed Al Malik, Director General of ISISCO, in order for him to read the declaration. You have the floor, Mr. Director General.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. شكرا جزيلا لجميع من شاركنا هذا المنتدى.
All those of you who have contributed. I would like to thank most specifically the Excellency the President Idris Deby, and also I'd like to thank all those of you who have contributed to enrich debate, and I would like to thank Dr. Mohammed bin Abdul Karim Laisa for the and I'd like to thank most specifically Ali bin Rashid al-Naimi as well, because specific thanks go to Sheikh al-Islam Shukrzada, who has been quite helpful, and I'm going to read out to you the draft declaration, which has been forwarded to you, and we hope that you will be able to react in a week's time. In the name of Allah, most merciful, most compassionate, the webinar on role of religious leaderships in face of crises. All divine religions share the belief in a set of major ethical human values that should serve as the groundwork for a true cooperation between peoples. Throughout the history of humanity, moral values have played a key role in pulling people together to overcome challenges and crises. Through the solidarity of the voices of wisdom, goodness, and faith, and the invocation of the common heritage of human ethical values, humanity has managed to stimulate action and orient behavior. This can still be seen amid the ongoing COVID-19 crisis, with the launch of a number of leading humanitarian initiatives in educational and sociocultural areas in the Islamic world and beyond, out of a spirit of solidarity and optimism, which should guide our endeavors for cooperation between followers of religions and believers in general to establish a common system of ethical values. Such initiative should emanate from our belief that Allah has made all people equal in rights and obligations, and from our awareness of civilization and human responsibility of religious leaderships to contribute efficient solutions to humanity in line with the contents and guidelines relevant to the promotion of solidarity and brotherhood set out by regional international organizations. We focus on solidarity, and there is also these include the initiative of the custodian of two holy mosques for dialogue among the followers of religious and culture in its executive plan. The Mecca Charter, Marrakesh Declaration on the Rights of Religious Minorities in the Islamic World, document on human fraternity for world peace and heading together, United Nations Alliance of Civilization, Cairo document for citizenship, and ISISCO Vatican Declaration on the promotion of the culture of respect and human solidarity issued in Buenos Aires, recalling the great appreciation for these humanitarian solidarity initiatives echoed in international media and on social networks during the current crisis. We, religious and intellectual leadership participating in the webinar, role of religious leadership in face of crisis held by the Islamic World Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, the Muslim World League, and the World Muslim Communities Council reaffirmed all religions follow a belief that humankind is a combination of two complementary entities, body and soul, each one serving the other. Based on this universal principle, achieving the coveted development to meet the material needs of humanity should be paralleled with the spiritual development and ethical purification of the moral value-based needs. Accordingly, any global model for comprehensive sustainable development requires an ethical and spiritual system with a focus on moral commitment to handle crises, overcome challenges, and achieve material and spiritual development. As religious leaderships, it is incumbent upon us to help humanity address obstacles and crises and provide conceptions and solutions inspired from the values shared by all humans based on two fundamentals. First, commitment to universal ethics, building a new world order and a universal model for human development that pays attention to crisis management can only be possible through a consensus on a set of ethics shared by all nations. Our duty as religious leaderships is to reach a preliminary consensus based on a set of binding values and fundamental ethical standards and behaviors. Once agreed upon by all religious leaderships, these values and standards will then form a code of ethics for nations and societies, which should emanate from the essence of truths of faith, as religious and human action is closely related to ethical behavior. In fact, true religion's practice is the epitome of good morals. Second, commitment to the preservation of human dignity. Humanity will never agree on standard ethical framework unless there is a strong commitment to human dignity or the inalienable human rights to avoid the instrumentalization of humans by their fellow humans and render physical differences and cultural affiliation, race, gender, age, color, religion, language, etc., as measures for human dignity. These differences should not serve as a basis for discrimination, injustice, or contempt. Until all circumstances, the guiding principles for human relations is to love to your brother what you love for yourself. We also reaffirm that the preservation of human dignity is made up of 5 moral principles: faith, peace, solidarity, tolerance, and equality. All these principles are conditional on religious action common to religion toward all human moralization as expressed by the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him. I was sent to uphold and complement ethical values, to further moralize all aspects of life and ensure that good morals are observed in the various fields requires a code of ethics specific to each of these fields. For instance, life ethics, ethics of artificial intelligence, ethics of scientific research, economic ethics, sports ethics, media ethics, to be inspired from the following principles. The first of these principles, commitment to the right of faith and respect for religions. Upholding moral values involves observing the duty of faith. Indeed, faith is the source of all morals. With it, humans achieve moral elevation to align their deeds with these values and virtues which people seek to fulfill and compete with. Otherwise, they will turn into narrow and calculated interests, since morals are proportional to belief. Second principle, commitment to the right to life and dissemination of peace. This requires refraining from all practices likely to jeopardize life in its individual, societal, and universal dimensions. This involves peaceful resolution of disputes and conflicts, fulfillment of justice, and abstention from physically and psychologically harming others, and criminalizing torture and killing of people unless they encroach on the inalienable rights of others. This also requires the protection of life on this planet and preserve the ecosystem, which puts creatures into an interconnected order. Indeed, humanity cannot survive without global peace. The third principle, commitment to human solidarity and co-building a just world economy. This requires taking into account the necessary interest and social needs of people. in accordance with the values of compassion and solidarity with the needy, the vulnerable, the poor, and the sick. This solidarity should not be limited to providing temporary relief assistance to the needy individuals and communities, but it should also allow for the development of a global system during and after crisis in service of humanity and fulfillment of justice between peoples. Indeed, there is no global peace without global justice. Fourth principle, commitment to the culture of tolerance in words and deeds. In this regard, followers of religions, especially responsible religious leaderships, should promote the values of fraternity between followers of religions, reject all forms of hate and racism, and refute the clash of civilizations theories. They should also refrain from all behavior likely to disparage other faiths, scorn their symbols and objectives, and incite hatred, zealotry, and violence against their followers, most notably when these faiths are needed in times of crises that befall humanity. In addition, politicians, leaders, intellectuals, and education and media experts should refrain from any conduct that will strain relationship between followers of other religions and incite rising generations to defame other sanctities. No justice can be fulfilled without true tolerance in theory and in practice. Fifth principle, commitment to the principle of gender equality in rights and obligations through the criminalization of sexual exploitation, equality of rights and duties between men and women, and the rejection of domination of girls and women in general. This also entails raising awareness of rising generation of the fact that men and women were created by the same God, and that they share the responsibility of building an organized life, and that they should not destroy their families through domestic violence, which has increased during the lockdown. Therefore, family relations should be enhanced during crises, and there is no human tolerance without mutual respect between men and women. There is no human tolerance without mutual respect between men and women. To attain these noble objectives and reaping their benefits together, we stress the need for intensifying our efforts to bring viewpoints and positions closer together regarding the efficient ways to address these crises and sustain joint action through an executive plan, workable programs, and creative solutions to give effect to the outcomes of this declaration. The aim is to provide the weighted solutions by the countries and peoples of the world in such a way as to enable religious leaders to discharge their missions as civilizational witnesses, and peace and blessing be upon you. Thank you. Now, with this, I would like to thank all those who have contributed to enrich the debate in this virtual forum, starting with His Excellency, the President of Chad, and the Honorable and Excellencies, the Imams and Mashayikh, and the Excellencies, the Ministers, and many others. Would like to thank you immensely for your contributions, and we had hoped to have with us we hope to have to succeed in discharging our duties properly, and God has helped us to discharge our duties properly. I'd like to stress the importance that ISISCO opens its heart to you, to work with you on an ongoing basis and involve you. So please feel free to enrich us with your ideas that will contribute immensely, not necessarily to serve humanity or as a whole. Thanks are extended to all of you. Rest assured, ladies and gentlemen, that all these virtual fora will be made available on the platform of the website of ISISCO and under the umbrella of ISISCO. Once again, I would like to thank you, and peace and blessing of God be with you. Shukran. Tuda. Thank you. Thank you.